walk you through the post-lab assignment for Virtual Lab 3, the extraction experiment. So the first two questions on this post-lab assignment are pretty similar. They're asking you to locate the position of water, diethyl ether, hexanol, and boric acid in the separatory funnel. So I'm just going to sketch a little separatory funnel up here, and in the simulation, in the experiment, you are going to be able to visibly see two distinct layers inside the separatory funnel. If you hover your cursor over the top layer, or if you hover your cursor over the bottom layer, it's going to tell you which chemicals are present in each layer. So you're going to hover your cursor over, let's say, the top layer, and it's going to tell you what chemicals are in the top layer. One of them is going to be either water or diethyl ether, and the second one will be either 1-hexanol or boric acid. And you're going to use this information to answer this question as well as this question. And again, keep in mind, one of these two substances will be on the top, the other will be on the bottom. And then same thing down here. One of them will be on the top, the other will be on the bottom. For the water and the diethyl ether, you're being asked to report the density. That's something that you want to look up. It's not going to be on the lab simulation. You're going to need to just search it on the internet. And you also need to report whether the substance is polar or nonpolar. Now this one, you can kind of tell if a substance is polar or nonpolar by drawing its structure out and looking at intermolecular forces, but it's faster and easier to just look that up. So just do an internet search. Is water polar or nonpolar? Is diethyl ether polar or nonpolar? Answer those questions. Now, in terms of the polar versus nonpolar, these two substances are going to have different polarity, meaning that one of them is going to be polar and the other one is going to be nonpolar. Having different polarity is what causes them to form two separate layers in this separatory funnel. If they were both polar, they would mix together and you'd only see one layer. If they were both nonpolar, they'd mix together and you'd only see one layer. So again, one of these is going to be polar and the other is going to be nonpolar. Now moving down to question number 2, you've already answered whether each of these is in the top layer or the bottom layer. So let's say hexanol, 1-hexanol, you already figured out if it's the top layer or the bottom layer. Now to answer this next question, is it polar or nonpolar? What you're going to do is take a look at where it is, top layer or bottom layer, and what else is present in that same layer. So two things will mix together if they have the same polarity. So if you have something that is polar with another thing that is polar, those two things are going to mix together. If you have nonpolar with nonpolar, those two things are also going to mix together. But if you have something that is polar with something that is nonpolar, they are not going to mix. No mixing, two separate layers. So let's just say that the hexanol is in the top layer. And let's say that the water is also in the top layer. That would mean that hexanol and water need to have the same polarity. So if the internet told you that water is nonpolar, that would mean that hexanol also needed to be nonpolar. In order for them to mix together, they need to have the same polarity. If they're in the same layer, they've mixed together, and if they've mixed together, they have the same polarity. I'm going to erase these because I don't know if they're right or not. And also, actually, it's probably maybe easier to answer this question first. It's asking if this mixed with water or if it mixed with diethyl ether. That's going to just be based on what layer it's in or what it's combined with. You know, when you hover your cursor over the top layer, it's going to tell you one of these substances and one of these substances. So once you get through that part, then you are going to move on to questions 3 and 4. Those are also pretty similar. This one is asking you to choose, where is the water? Is it the top layer or the bottom layer? Well, that's going to be based on what you wrote here. And why is it on the top or the bottom layer? So you've got two choices. It either has to do with density or it has to do with polarity. Now, polarity Doesn't really have anything to do with the position of stuff that's in the separatory funnel. Density, that is a reflection of how heavy a substance might be or what its mass might be. So you keep that in mind, density versus polarity. What's going to cause water to float up on the top or sink down on the bottom? Is it going to be its density, or is it going to be its polarity? And then in question number 4, it's asking you, where is the hexanol? Is it in the ether or the water? Hexanol, you will have answered that question right here. And why is it there? Does it have to do with density, or does it have to do with polarity? What is causing hexanol to mix with whatever it's mixing with? And then the last question on here, what is the name of the reaction that you performed? This is going to be one of your alkene addition reactions. That's just a hint. That is not the name of the reaction. This is a type of an alkene addition reaction. So go look up your alkene addition reactions and figure out which one you performed.